The Ancient Awakening DR. Keth Morvan pressed his six-fingered hands against the observation window of Research Station Epsilon 7, watching the excavation robots work on the surface of Nexus Prime below. The dead planet had been calling to xenoarchaeologists for decades with its mysterious ruins, but the Zelani Exploration Council had only recently approved funding for a proper dig site. As the lead scientist on the project, Keth felt the weight of his species' expectations on his narrow shoulders. The Zelani were natural explorers, their tall, slender forms perfectly adapted for zero-gravity work. Their large, dark eyes could see wavelengths that most species couldn't detect, making them excellent researchers. But they were also peaceful by nature, having never developed weapons beyond basic hunting tools. War was a concept they understood intellectually, but had never experienced personally. Dr. Morvan, called Zara Olix from the communication station, her melodic voice carrying a note of excitement. The deep excavation team has found something significant. They're requesting your immediate attention. Keth floated gracefully through the station's corridors to the main laboratory, where holographic displays showed real-time data from the dig site. What he saw made his heart race with anticipation. The robots had uncovered a massive structure buried beneath kilometers of ancient sediment. The architecture was unlike anything in the Galactic Archaeological Database. Run a full spectral analysis, Keth ordered, his scientific mind already racing with possibilities. I want to know the composition, age, and any energy signatures. The results came back within minutes, and they were disturbing. The structure was made of materials that shouldn't exist, according to current understanding of physics. More troubling, it was emitting low-level energy readings, despite being buried for what appeared to be millions of years. Sir, said junior researcher Vex Talman, his voice trembling slightly, the energy signatures are increasing. Whatever this is, it's becoming more active. Keth studied the data streams flowing across his screens. The ancient structure was definitely responding to the excavation, almost as if it were waking up from a long sleep. Every instinct told him to halt the dig and retreat, but scientific curiosity proved stronger than caution. Continue the excavation, he decided, but establish a safe perimeter. If the energy levels spike beyond acceptable parameters, we evacuate immediately. For the next 6 hours, the team worked carefully to uncover more of the mysterious structure. What they found challenged everything they knew about ancient civilizations. The building was impossibly complex, with technology that seemed to blend organic and mechanical elements. Flowing metal surfaces pulsed with their own internal light, and strange symbols covered every surface dot, and everything went wrong. The energy readings didn't just spike, they exploded off the scale. The ancient structure began to unfold like a massive flower, revealing technology that hummed with malevolent purpose. Mechanical forms emerged from hidden chambers, moving with fluid grace despite their obvious age. They looked like a cross between insects and machines, with multiple limbs ending in tools that could clearly be used as weapons. Emergency evacuation. Protocol, Keth shouted as alarms began blaring throughout the station. All personnel to emergency stations. But it was already too late. The excavation site had become a hive of activity as more mechanical forms emerged from the structure. They moved with purpose, beginning to construct something that made Keth's blood run cold. The machines were building what looked like a massive cannon, pointed directly at the space where their research station orbited. Zara, get me a communication channel to the Zelani Council, Keth ordered, trying to keep panic out of his voice. Emergency priority. We need immediate evacuation support. I'm trying, sir, but something is interfering with our long-range communications, Zara replied, her fingers dancing over her control panel. The ancient structure is emitting some kind of jamming field. The mechanical forms on the planet's surface worked with frightening efficiency. The massive weapon they were constructing grew larger by the minute, its purpose becoming increasingly clear. This wasn't just some ancient defensive system. This was a planet killer, and it was being aimed directly at inhabited worlds. "Sir," Vex called out from his monitoring station, "I'm detecting similar energy signatures activating on other dead worlds throughout this sector. Whatever we found, it's not isolated. There are more of these things, and they're all waking up." Keth felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's life support systems. They hadn't just discovered an ancient ruin. They had awakened something that had been sleeping for millions of years, something that posed a threat to every living world in the galaxy. "Zara, keep trying to reach the Council," he ordered, "but also send out a general distress call on all emergency frequencies. Every species, every government, every military organization in range. We need help, and we need it fast." The young communications officer worked frantically at her station, broadcasting their desperate message into the void of space. The signal carried details of their discovery, the awakening ancient weapons, and coordinates for their location. It was a plea for help sent to anyone who might be listening. Meanwhile, the weapon on Nexus Prime's surface continued to grow. The mechanical forms had been joined by others, creating a vast construction site that stretched for kilometers. They worked with a precision that spoke of ancient programming, following instructions that had been waiting patiently for eons. Light years away, the distress signal reached the outer monitoring stations of dozens of civilizations. Most dismissed it as another archaeological expedition that had bitten off more than it could chew. The Galactic Union's bureaucracy would take weeks to organize any kind of response, and by then it would be far too late. But one species took the call seriously. Captain Elena Rodriguez was reviewing patrol reports in her ready room aboard the UES Prometheus when Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park burst through the door without bothering to announce herself. "Captain, you need to hear this immediately," Park said, her face pale with urgency. "We've intercepted an alien distress call. The translation is rough, but they're talking about ancient weapons and imminent planetary destruction." Elena looked up from her reports, noting the genuine fear in her officer's eyes. Park was a veteran of the Centauri border conflicts and didn't scare easily. "Play it." The message came through the ship's speakers in the original Zilani language, followed by the computer's translation. The desperate tone came through clearly, despite the linguistic barriers. Dr. Keth Morven's voice carried the weight of impending doom as he described the awakening weapons and the threat they posed to all inhabited worlds. "Ma'am," Park said quietly, "long-range sensors are confirming massive energy signatures at the coordinates they provided. Whatever they found, it's big and it's active." Elena stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. Humanity had only recently joined the galactic community, and most species still viewed them with suspicion. Humans were seen as an aggressive species from a dangerous world, barely civilized enough to be trusted with interstellar travel. But that reputation also meant that when someone needed warriors, they called on humans. Contact Admiral Chun immediately, Elena ordered. Priority 1 communications. We have a situation that requires fleet response. "Ma'am, shouldn't we verify the threat first?" Park asked. "Our orders are to patrol this sector, not respond to alien distress calls." Elena turned back to her officer with an expression that brooked no argument. "Lieutenant Commander, there's a research station full of scientists about to be vaporized by ancient weapons. They asked for help, and we're going to provide it. Contact the Admiral." The communication link to Earth Defense Command took several minutes to establish, but when Admiral Marcus Chun's weathered face appeared on the screen, Elena could see he already knew something was happening. "Captain Rodriguez," Chun said without preamble, "we've been monitoring the same distress signal. Intelligence suggests this is a genuine threat, possibly connected to the destroyer artifacts we've been tracking." Elena felt her heart skip. "The Destroyers were legendary, even among humans, an ancient race that had supposedly wiped out entire civilizations before vanishing millions of years ago. Most xenorchaeologists considered them a myth. Sir, if the destroyers are real and they're waking up, asterisk. Then we have hours, maybe less, before they start targeting inhabited worlds, Chun interrupted. I'm ordering a full fleet mobilization. Every available ship is to converge on your position immediately. Every ship, sir? Every ship, Chun. Confirmed grimly. Captain, you're about to make first contact with the Zelani under combat conditions. Your orders are to protect that research station at all costs while the fleet assembles. We cannot allow those weapons to become fully operational. The communication ended, leaving Elena staring at a blank screen. Around her, the Prometheus was already coming to life as the crew responded to battle station's alerts. Through the viewport, she could see other ships in their patrol group, changing course to join them. Back at Research Station Epsilon 7, Dr. Keth Morven watched in growing horror as the weapon on Nexus Prime's surface began to power up. Energy readings spiked beyond anything his instruments could measure. The massive cannon was almost complete, and its target was becoming clearer. Inhabited Zelani colony world just 3 light-years away. Sir, Zara called out, her voice filled with desperate hope. I'm receiving a response to our distress call. The signal is coming from Earth Defense Force vessels. They say help is on the way. Keth felt a moment of confusion. The humans were a young species, barely known to the galactic community. What help could they possibly provide against technology that had destroyed civilizations, when their world was still cooling from its formation? He was about to find out that when humans said they were coming to help, they didn't send a rescue mission. They sent a war fleet. The ancient weapons on Nexus Prime continued their deadly preparations, unaware that they had awakened something even more dangerous than themselves. They had threatened the wrong species' neighbors, and humanity was about to remind the galaxy why Deathworlders should never be underestimated. In the depths of space, the greatest military force humanity had ever assembled began its journey toward a confrontation that would determine the fate of countless worlds. The Zelani had asked for help, and help was coming with fusion drives, blazing and weapons armed. Asterisk. When Deathworlders answer the call, the first sign that something extraordinary was happening came when space itself began to shimmer near the edge of the Nexus Prime system. Dr. Keth Morven watched from the observation deck of Research Station Epsilon 7 as reality seemed to bend and twist. Then, with a flash of light that temporarily blinded the station's sensors, the first human ship dropped out of hyperspace. It was unlike anything the Zelani had ever seen. Where their ships were elegant curves designed for efficiency and comfort, this vessel was all sharp angles and predatory lines. Gun ports dotted its hull like the eyes of some metallic beast, and energy readings showed weapon systems that dwarfed anything in the Zelani arsenal. That's the UE's Prometheus, Zara announced, her voice filled with awe. Their Captain Rodriguez is requesting permission to come aboard. Granted, Keth replied, though his mind was still struggling to process what he was seeing. The human ship alone was 3 times the size of their research station, and it was clearly built for war. But the real shock came when more ships began arriving. The space around Nexus Prime filled with vessels as the human fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfectly coordinated waves. Battleships, carriers, destroyers, and ship classes the Zelani had no names for. Each one bristled with weapons and radiated the kind of controlled aggression that made it clear why humans were called Deathworlders. Captain Elena Rodriguez materialized on the station's transport pad with an efficiency that spoke of countless boarding actions. She was shorter than the Zelani, but moved with a predatory grace that reminded Keth of the hunting cats from his homeworld. Her uniform was practical rather than decorative, and the sidearm on her hip looked like it could punch through station bulkheads. "Dr. Morven," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command. "I'm Captain Rodriguez. We received your distress call and came as quickly as possible. What's the situation?" Keth gestured toward the observation window, where the ancient weapon on Nexus Prime's surface was clearly visible. The massive cannon had grown to enormous proportions, and energy readings showed it was almost ready to fire. "We accidentally awakened ancient technology," he explained. "The archaeological site revealed weapon systems that have been dormant for millions of years. They're targeting inhabited worlds, starting with the Zelani colony at Kepler 442. Elena studied the weapon with the practiced eye of a military officer. How long until it's ready to fire? Based on current energy buildup patterns, approximately 4 hours, Keth replied. Captain, with respect, I don't understand what you hope to accomplish. This technology destroyed entire civilizations. Your ships, while impressive, are... Doctor, Elena interrupted gently. With respect, you have no idea what human ships are capable of. May I suggest we focus on the immediate problem? Through the viewport, more human vessels continued to arrive. The fleet now numbered in the hundreds, with more ships dropping out of hyperspace every few minutes. The sheer scale of the response left the Zelani scientists speechless. Sir, Zara called from her station, the human fleet is requesting tactical data on the weapon system and the mechanical constructs on the surface. Provide them with everything we have, Keth ordered. He turned back to Elena. Captain, those machines down there have been building for hours. They've created what appears to be a massive industrial complex around the weapon. How do you propose to stop something that advanced? Elena's smile was sharp and predatory. Doctor, humans have been stopping things that are bigger, older, and supposedly more advanced than us since we first picked up rocks and decided to hunt mammoths. The principle hasn't changed, just the scale. As if summoned by her words, the communication system crackled to life with an incoming message from the human fleet. The voice that came through was gravelly and carried absolute authority. This is Admiral Marcus Chun, aboard the U's Ragnarok. All ships report ready for combat operations. Captain Rodriguez, you are authorized to begin preliminary bombardment to test enemy defenses. Elena nodded to her invisible superior. Understood, Admiral. Beginning reconnaissance by fire. The Prometheus moved away from the research station with fluid grace, taking position between the Zelani facility and the planet below. What happened next would be burned into Keth's memory for the rest of his life. The human ship opened fire, with weapons that turned night into day. Particle beams lanced down toward the planet's surface, striking the ancient machines with precision that suggested targeting systems beyond anything the Zelani had imagined. Where the beams hit, the mechanical constructs simply ceased to exist, vaporized by energies that made the planet's surface glow like a small sun. Asterisk. But the ancient weapons fought back. Energy bolts erupted from the surface, striking the Prometheus with forces that should have destroyed any vessel. The human ship's shields flared to life, absorbing impacts that would have shattered a Zelani exploration vessel. The ship shuddered but held position, continuing its bombardment with methodical precision. Interesting, Elena murmured, watching her ship's tactical display. They're using coherent neutron streams. Haven't seen that technology in about 3 million years. Your ship is holding up remarkably well, Keth observed, his scientist's mind noting the technical specifications despite his fear. Doctor, the Prometheus is a patrol vessel. She's not even one of our heavy hitters. Elena gestured toward the fleet assembling in the system's outer reaches. Those are. As if responding to her words, the main human battle fleet began to move. The largest ships were mobile cities bristling with weapons that defied classification. They moved in formation with a precision that spoke of countless hours of drill and an understanding of thought. Warfare that was clearly genetic to the species. The ancient weapon on Nexus Prime seemed to sense the approaching threat. Its energy output spiked dramatically as it prepared to fire on the approaching human fleet. The mechanical constructs on the surface worked with desperate efficiency, trying to complete their preparations before the humans could reach effective range. "All ships, this is Admiral Chun," came the voice from the fleet commander. "The enemy weapon is preparing to fire. We're not going to give it the chance. All vessels, execute Alpha Strike Pattern 7. Target the weapon's base structure and power systems." What followed was a demonstration of human military doctrine that left the Zalani scientists speechless. The entire fleet opened fire simultaneously, creating a coordinated barrage that turned the planet's surface into a hellscape of explosions and energy discharges. The ancient weapon, for all its advanced technology, found itself facing weapons. Systems designed by a species that had turned warfare into a science. But the ancient machines were not defenseless. As the human bombardment continued, more mechanical forms emerged from hidden bunkers across the planet. These were different from the construction units, larger, more heavily armed, and clearly designed for combat. They launched themselves into space, seeking to engage the human fleet directly. "Interesting," Elena commented, watching the tactical display as hundreds of ancient war machines streaked toward the human ships. "They're using gravitic propulsion. No reaction mass needed." The human response was immediate and overwhelming. Fighter squadrons launched from the carriers, intercepting the ancient machines in battles that lit up the void between planet and fleet. But where the Zalani might have expected desperate dogfights, they saw systematic extermination. The human fighters moved with a coordination that suggested they were operating as a single organism, each pilot instinctively knowing where their squadron mates would be. "How are they doing that?" Vex asked, staring at the tactical display. "The coordination is impossible without faster-than-light communication. It's called training," Elena replied simply. "Human pilots drill together until they can anticipate each other's actions without conscious thought. We call it pack hunting." The ancient machines, despite their advanced technology, found themselves outmaneuvered by opponents who fought with an instinctive understanding of three-dimensional combat. The human fighters weren't just better armed, they were better at the fundamental act of warfare. But the real shock came when the ancient weapon finally achieved firing readiness. The massive cannon oriented itself toward the approaching human fleet and discharged a beam of energy that should have vaporized everything in its path. The blast struck the lead human battleship, the U's Ragnarok, with enough force to sterilize a continent. The ship's shields held. "Impossible," Keth whispered. "Nothing can withstand that kind of energy output." "Doctor," Elena said calmly, "humans come from a world where the weather tries to kill us, the animals try to eat us, and the geology tries to bury us. We build our ships accordingly." The Ragnarok returned fire with weapons that made the previous bombardment look like a light show. The main battery consisted of accelerated antimatter containment systems that could theoretically crack a planet's crust. When they fired, the ancient weapon's base structure didn't just explode, it ceased to exist at the molecular level. But even as the primary weapon was destroyed, sensors detected more ancient installations activating across the system. The awakening had triggered a network of facilities that had been dormant for millions of years. Each one was beginning to power up weapon systems that could threaten entire worlds. "Admiral," Elena said into her communicator, "we're looking at a systematic threat across multiple star systems. This isn't just one ancient weapon, it's an entire defensive network." "Understood, Captain. We came prepared for that possibility." Chun's voice carried grim satisfaction. "All ships, prepare for extended combat operations. We're going to hunt down every last one of these facilities and make sure they never threaten anyone again. A human fleet began to spread out through the system, methodically hunting down every trace of ancient technology. They worked with the efficiency of a species that had survived on a world where everything tried to kill them, and they had learned to kill it. First, Dr. Kath Morven watched the systematic destruction of technology that had once terrorized the galaxy, and he began to understand something fundamental about humans. They weren't just warriors, they were protectors. They had heard a call for help from a species they barely knew, and they had responded with their entire military force. "Captain," he said quietly, "why did you come? Your species barely knows us. We're not allies. We're not trade partners. Why risk so much for strangers?" Elena looked at him with an expression that was both gentle and fierce. "Doctor, in human culture, there's a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. You called for help. We answered. That's what good people do." As the last ancient facility was reduced to cooling metal and fused stone, the human fleet began the process of securing the system. They would stay until every trace of the threat was eliminated, until the Zelani could return to their peaceful exploration of the cosmos. The galaxy had learned something important that day. When ancient evils awakened and peaceful species called for help, the Deathworlders didn't send a rescue mission. They sent a war fleet. And they brought friends. Asterisk.